welcome to the deep dive. You're here because you need to get past all the noise and really understand what's important.
And that's exactly what we do. We dig into the sources, pull out the key information, and basically lay it out for you clearly and usefully.
Today, we're getting into something absolutely vital: cybersecurity compliance.
Mm-hmm.
And tied into that, the really essential role of penetration testing.
Yeah, it's critical stuff. We've got quite a mix of sources today. We have guides on the regulations themselves, some real-world chat from Reddit about picking pen test companies,
Blog posts about choosing consultants, the limits of pen testing.
right, and even a detailed report from actual penetration tests, plus an overview of red teaming, which is kind of the next level.
So our mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. Get a solid handle on the compliance landscape, understand what penetration testing really offers, the good and the bad, and figure out how to actually choose the right security services.
Makes sense. And before we jump right in, we definitely want to thank our partners.
Absolutely. Big thanks first to www.cisomarketplace.services. They're an on-demand marketplace for offensive security services, very relevant to today's topic.
Definitely. And also thanks to generatepolicy.com, offering on-demand AI for creating information security program policies. Super helpful for that compliance piece we're about to discuss.
Okay, let's start with that foundation: cybersecurity compliance. We looked at the Cybersecurity Regulatory Compliance Guide 2023, and it's way more than just ticking boxes, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's really about building this whole framework, covering how you protect data, what security controls you have in place, how you'll respond if something does happen, managing risk, the whole picture.
And the reasons for doing it are pretty compelling. There's the legal side, obviously.
Huge. You've got things like high power fines, potentially up to, $1.5 million, and GDPR.
Yeah, GDPR can be massive, like 20 million or even 4% of global turnover. That's serious money.
It really is. But it's not just about avoiding fines. Fundamentally, it's about protecting data, using encryption, controlling who has access. It's about cutting down your risk.
And building trust.
Right.
Customers, partners, they need to feel confident.
Exactly. That trust factor is huge. And if you ignore compliance, well...
It's not pretty. We're talking those big fines, yeah, but also potential legal action. Civil, maybe even criminal in some cases.
That's possible, yes. And then there's the reputational hit. A breach happens, you lose customers, sales drop. It can take ages to recover from that.
Plus the operational chaos.
Yeah.
Downtime, investigations. It just grinds things to a halt.
It really does. Now, drilling down a bit, the regulations themselves get specific about protection. For personal data, it's often about encryption, getting consent, letting people see or delete their data.
Right. The basics. And for financial data.
Well, you've got standards like PCI DSS for payment cards or the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act in the U.S. for financial institutions. They mandate really strong security around that sensitive info.
And it gets complicated fast if you operate internationally, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Trying to follow rules for, say, the EU and the U.S. at the same time.
Oh, yeah. It's a real juggling act. And it's not just your house you need to keep in order. The guide mentions something like 51% of breaches involve third-party vendors.
Wow, over half.
Yeah.
So you really need to vet your suppliers, too.
Absolutely. Their security posture directly impacts yours, and the number of these standards is just growing. GDPR, NIS2 in Europe, FISMA, CCPA in the U.S.
Then you mentioned China, Australia, Argentina, Singapore, Colombia. It's everywhere.
It's a global thing now, definitely. Which leads to the question, how do you prove you're doing all this?
Audits, yes.
Audits are key. They're those really thorough checks on your controls, your processes, making sure you're aligned with the rules, and it's not a one-and-done thing.
Right, it's ongoing. Regulations change.
Exactly. And that's where something like a Security Operations Center, a SOC, becomes really valuable. The guide mentions the Cybersecurity platform as an example.
So the SOC helps with continuous monitoring, finding threats, responding.
Yes, all things that are crucial for staying compliant day to day. It helps you keep on top of it all.
Okay, so compliance is the framework, the rules of the road. Now, let's talk about penetration testing. How does that fit in?
Right, pen testing. Think of it like a controlled attack simulation. You're essentially hiring ethical hackers to try and find weaknesses in your systems.
Like testing the locks on the doors.
Exactly. Your applications, your network configurations, servers, they look for vulnerabilities before attackers can exploit them. It's often needed for things like PCI compliance, too.
So the benefits are finding those weaknesses, obviously testing your actual defenses.
Seeing what the real world impact of a breach could be, and yeah, showing stakeholders you're taking security seriously.
But it's not a magic bullet, is it? I remember reading there are limitations.
Definitely not magic. A pen test can't stop every breach. For one thing, real attackers often have way more time than a typical test allows. Weeks, months sometimes.
Whereas a pen test is usually time-boxed, right?
Yeah.
A week or two?
Typically, yeah. And the testers might not have full access, or they might be restricted in what they can do. Like, they probably won't launch a massive denial of service attack that could crash your systems.
Because that would disrupt the business. Makes sense.
Right. And they often stick to tools the client approves, which might not cover every trick an attacker knows.
So it's different from, say, a white box test.
Very different. With a white box assessment, the testers get full internal details, architecture diagrams, sometimes even source code. It's a much deeper dive.
And I imagine the cost reflects that difference. Pen testing isn't cheap, is it?
No, it varies quite a bit. The Tech Magic blog broke it down.
Yeah.
You could be looking at $10,000, maybe up to $30,000 or more for a really comprehensive white box test.
Depends on the scope, the company's experience.
How much detail you want in the report, market rates, all sorts of things. And the pricing models vary too.
Right. You mentioned fixed cost, retainers, hourly rates, maybe $100 to $300 an hour.
Yeah, project-based, even subscriptions for ongoing tests. Oh, and social engineering tests, testing the people. That's often a separate thing, maybe $4,000 to $10,000 plus.
So the point is, even those higher costs are probably way less than cleaning up after a major breach.
Almost certainly. The cost of a breach can be astronomical, so the investment in testing makes financial sense.
Which brings us to picking the right company to do the test. That seems critical.
Absolutely crucial. We saw some good advice on this from a Reddit thread and the Cyber Advisors blog. You need to look at their expertise. Do they have certifications like CEH, OSCP?
Reputation matters too, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Reviews, case studies.
For sure, and understand their methodology. Is it just automated scans, or do they do proper manual testing too? That's important.
And what about the report? And help fixing things?
Yes. Good reporting is key. Do they explain the findings clearly? Do they offer guidance on remediation? Communication and transparency are vital.
And making sure they're ethical and follow the law, obviously.
Non-negotiable. The Reddit discussion also made a great point. The best firms try to understand why you want the test, what your business actually does before they even start hacking.
Right, not just running down a checklist like the OAuth's top 10.
Exactly. That's a starting point, but it's not everything. And watch out for hidden fees. Get everything clearly itemized up front.
Good advice. Okay, so that's pen testing. But you mentioned red teaming earlier. How is that different?
Red teaming. Yeah. Think of it as a broader, more strategic approach. It's less about finding every single vulnerability and more about testing your overall security resilience.
Resilience, meaning how you react and respond.
Exactly. It tests your detection capabilities, your incident response processes, even employee awareness, often over a longer period.
So it's simulating a real adversary more closely.
Precisely. Red teams often mimic the specific tactics and techniques, the TTPs, of known threat groups. They might combine cyber attacks with social engineering, maybe even physical attempts if that's in scope.
Wow, okay, so it's not just can we get in, but what happens when we do get in?
That's a good way to put it. How does the organization react? How does the defensive team, the blue team, respond? Sometimes you have a purple team kind of bridging the gap between them.
Sounds intense. And probably expensive and complex to run.
It definitely requires significant expertise, resources, and careful planning. And like pen testing, it has limits. It's rarely continuous, and it's constrained by the team's skills and the engagement's time frame.
The Safe Reach article also mentioned aligning the red team's goals with the business goals.
Yes, that's critical. If your big worry is supply chain risk, the red team should focus there. And the info they get up front varies. Black box means no info, gray box is some, white box is full details.
And they use specialized tools, too. You mentioned Nmap, Shodan for recon.
Slurp for AWS, Dance Recon, then tools like NCAT, Wireshark for network stuff, air cracking for Wi-Fi, a whole arsenal.
And there's automation coming into play now, too. Breach and attack simulation.
Right. BAS tools can automate some adversarial tactics, letting you test things more continuously. But for a full red team exercise, clear goals, good metrics, a solid methodology, and smart automation are all key.
Okay, let's make this concrete. We have that example pen test report from PurpleSec, for example, Institute. What did that show?
It showed some pretty serious issues. They found a high-risk attack surface and critical vulnerabilities allowing root access. Basically full control.
Oh. What do they exploit?
They used the Eternal Blue exploit, that major Windows vulnerability, against the EPO and remote desktop server.
And what did that give them access to?
User files containing private patient healthcare information, diagnostics, insurance details, receipts, really sensitive stuff.
Yikes. That's exactly what compliance rules like EOPA are meant to prevent. What else did they find?
They found another vulnerability channel on a couple other systems, didn't exploit it fully, but noted it could be used for denial of service attacks.
So what were the main recommendations? Patching, I assume.
Top priority. Patch those critical systems against MS-17-010, the patch for Eternal Blue. Also, run monthly vulnerability scans, enforce stronger passwords, 10-plus complex characters on systems with that health data.
Social engineering training for staff, which makes sense given the later findings.
And disabling unnecessary services like SMB and the print spooler on the McAfee server. They also found old, weak SSL protocols, SSLv2, SSLv3, still active.
And issues with certificates and encryption on the outside, too.
Yeah, external scans found certificate problems, no HSDS enforcement, that thing that forces browsers to use secure connections, and weak encryption algorithms being used.
And the social engineering tests, how did they go?
Disturbingly well, frankly. 3 full breaches just via phone calls, got 6 passwords that way, found that lots of systems use the same password.
Ouch. That explains the strong recommendation for training and better password policies.
Definitely. And the email phishing test also got clicks and interactions. People fell for it.
So the report basically painted a picture of how a real attack would likely happen.
Exactly. Scenario 1. Social engineering gets them in, then they use Eternal Blue to escalate. Scenario 2. Target the security server itself. Disable the controls, and then just walk out with patient data, personal info, maybe even payment card data.
So the core recommendations keep coming back. Patch, scan, harden systems, use least privilege, disable unneeded stuff like SMB, train your people, encrypt your data.
It's that layered defense approach. Get the basics right. Revoke compromised credentials, manage patching consistently, train everyone, encrypt sensitive data at rest. It all ties together.
It really does. It's a powerful illustration of why this stuff matters. And speaking of getting the right help and tools.
Perfect time to thank our sponsors again. We really appreciate the support from www.cisomarketplace.services. That on-demand marketplace for offensive security services is directly relevant here.
Absolutely. Finding the right pen testing or red team is crucial. And also, big thanks again to GeneratePolicy.com for their on-demand AI policy creation. Getting those foundational policies right is step 1 for compliance.
Couldn't agree more.
So wrapping this deep dive up, what are the big takeaways?
Well, first, compliance isn't optional. It's the bedrock for protecting data, managing risk, and maintaining trust. Second, pen testing is incredibly valuable for finding specific holes in your armor.
But it has limitations. It's not the whole story.
Right. And third, red teaming offers that more holistic, strategic test of your actual resilience against sophisticated attacks.
So choosing the right services really depends on your specific situation, your risks, and doing your homework on the providers.
Absolutely. It needs a tailored approach. Combining solid compliance, rigorous testing, and continuous monitoring, that's how you build a real security in today's world.
Okay, so here's something to leave everyone thinking about. We know threats are getting smarter, regulations are getting more complex, so how are you going to make sure your organization isn't just checking the compliance boxes, but actually building a truly resilient security posture that can stand up to whatever comes next?